Conor McGregor was on his way out, and he's barely won a fight since, and he started a beef with me.
Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxer podcast. Hello and welcome back to Mouthpiece. I am Savage Dan.
I'm the Magic Man, Paulie Malignaggi.
And as always, we will be giving you the insight into the world of boxing. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, leave us questions. And speaking of questions, the best one from last week was, who is the greatest heavyweight of all time? You can only pick one option.
I mean, for me, the greatest heavyweight of all time, because of not just in the ring, but outside the ring, everything he stood for, the kind of person he was, and of course, an excellent champion, is Muhammad Ali. So, do I necessarily think he beats every single heavyweight in history? I don't know if he necessarily does, but for me, he's elite level. Possibly he beats every heavyweight in history on a certain given night, but I will say that he's the greatest for a lot of reasons. There was an allure about him. He became iconic and one of the most famous individuals on the planet because of so many reasons, and not just his ability to be a champion inside the ring.
Yeah, I agree. You know, there's a lot of names you can throw into the hat. There's Joe Jackson, there's Joe Louis, there are so many, George Foreman. But when you hear the word greatest, there's usually only one that comes to mind. It is obviously Muhammad Ali. Right. Let's review the weekend's results. Nowhere better to start than with Conor Benn. He got a first round stoppage of Vargas. I didn't see a blowout like that coming. What about you?
Nah, I'll tell you, Conor Benn has been steadily improving, getting better and better. And this was a statement. Because Samuel Vargas was not a guy who's been taken out like this. He's always been, subpar when it comes to being at world-class level, but he's been able to handle himself in the ring with world-class guys. He's not been blown out of the ring like this. So Conor Benn, even if you were going to say, okay, Samuel Vargas is a little bit shop-worn and maybe he's not as durable as the guys as when he fought those other guys, it's possible I may give you that, but not one round. I mean, this was a 90-second blowout. Conor Benn, it wasn't just about the fact that it was a blowout. It was not a one-punch knockout where you say, okay, he just clipped him, he caught him. Some really creative and nice, smooth combinations by Conor Benn. Nice footwork to enter the punch zone, closing the gap, and then letting his hands go in the right way. And like I said, creativity on the combinations he was throwing. I mean, it was a masterful performance in a very violent way in such a short time.
It is that way. It's violent, isn't it? Because it looks like every shot, even a jab has, loads of snap. The right hand whips over the left hook. Everything looks like it's thrown with venom, with real intention, with real purpose.
Yeah, and it was a statement win. And again, it was just, you took great point, Dan, with the venomous intentions and all that, but also just the smoothness at which it came out. Sometimes you throw angry punches and they come out looking a little bit sloppy, even if they land. Or they come out not looking as smooth. I mean, this was a smooth, violent performance. It really, really impressed me. I'll tell you, it really
What's that
did.
Down to? Balance?
Definitely balance. It starts with your balance, of course, because if you don't punch off of your balance, you won't be able to follow up with the combination. You're gonna lose steam on the combination after the first one or two punches. But when you're punching with solid balance, you're able to not only continue your combination, but to continue your combination and be effective with the rest of the combination. And that's really what Conor Benn showed there in that explosive combinations, and the explosive combinations that he ended the fight with. But not just that, also the creativity. I mean, he mixed in some uppercuts in there, hooks. So they came around from different angles. So Vargas didn't know where to cover up a turn two. It just came so fast, so sharp, and so again creative that he was completely blown away. And I was completely blown away by the performance.
Very intense in the ring, very intense outside of the ring. Also, it seems like when he's giving his post-fight conferences, he's ready to fight anyone and everyone right there and then. The name that he kept dropping was Amir Khan.
And I noticed there was talking about Amir Khan and things like that. Here's the thing, where my take on that. A guy like Amir Khan has been to the top of the mountain. So I think in order to allure him, get him back and get him in the ring to fight you, especially a guy like Khan who doesn't really need the money and is living comfortably, you probably have to bring a world championship to the table. I don't necessarily think it's a bad fight for Conor Benn at all. I think it's a great fight for Conor Benn to get Amir Khan, but you need to have the allure to get Khan into the ring against a Conor Benn. So you need something that Amir can take out of the fight in case he would win it, And right now, Amir Khan gets nothing out of the fight in case he would win it, I don't think it's wrong that Conor Benn wants the fight, but until you win a world championship, you're going to be stuck fighting maybe a little bit above level of Samuel Vargas. You'll possibly be able to fight some guys who performed well in world championship fights as opposed to guys like Samuel Vargas who perform well against solid ex-champions, I think maybe that's the next step. Guys who have challenged for world titles. I remember Teofimo Lopez on his way up the ladder blew away Diego Magdaleno. Magdaleno had been in world championship fights, and the performance Lopez put against Magdaleno really impressed me. I can remember that very vividly. So I think Conor Benn's next step might be against a guy who has challenged for world championships and maybe perform well in those fights, but maybe come up just short. But to get an ex-champion into the ring, especially a fading ex-champion, you probably want to hold that title so that they have a reason to want to take that risk at a point in their career where they're probably not looking to take too many risks. And so that's why I think I don't think Amir is going. I don't think the fight is suitable for Amir. It's obviously very suitable for Conor, but I don't think it's very suitable for Amir, and I understand that.
It didn't take long for Amir Khan to respond via Twitter anyway. He tweeted, "Conor, well done. Great kid. Wish him all the best. At this age, I was a world champ. Maybe if he had some belts, the fight would make sense. He's got a long way to go yet."
Yeah, and that's the thing. And
I agree.
Yeah, and I do agree, but I don't agree with the last part. I think it was a little subtle jab by Amir. He's got a long way to go yet. I don't think Conor has a long way to go. I really think Conor is ready to step up to elite level and see how he does against that elite level. So I don't think he's got a long way to go. So I thought that was a little bit of a subtle jab, but point taken. It's not a fight that really interests Amir until you get a world championship in there. Also, how long has it been since Amir fought last? Was it the Billy Dib fight, or did he fight afterwards?
It's a while ago. He's a reality TV.
Yeah. So with Amir too. For Amir too, if he's going to be demanding guys win world championships before he fights them, it's acceptable, but he's probably got to get himself into the rankings. I think if you've had such a long layoff, I don't know where you'll position yourself in the rankings. Granted, these things get manipulated anyway, but I'm just saying you probably got to come off a recent win. So Amir probably still has to take some kind of recent win, even if Conor was to win a world championship and lure him into the ring. At that point, though, if Conor wins a world championship, you get guys. Now you're in the mix to give guys like Kell Brook a world title fight, Amir Khan a world title fight. Now you're in the mix where you can take on these ex-champions who are, looking faded, especially that they're both British iconic stars, and really, really build up your name, from many levels, So I think Conor Benn's in a great position. I love also the rivalry with Florian Marku. I really like that rivalry, but I think at this point, Marku is probably better off continuing his rise and ascending, and those two guys can get it on in a much bigger fight. At this point, I think that rivalry has passed its point of fighting each other right now. I think now you need it to become just very, very big. There was a point where I think they could have fought each other on the rise, but at this point I think now they're both past that, and I don't think the fight's worth it to make now. Now I think you both reach the top 10, top 15 level, maybe being on a world championship level, and then you fight, where the fight's valuable to both.
Savannah Marshall also won. She had a late replacement in Maria Lindberg, emphatic stoppage, and it's kind of the statement we were looking for, Paulie. When we spoke about it last week, we did say we needed not just a win, but to look good, so that Clarissa Shields fight becomes, wanted.
Yeah, I think Savannah, she did very well and handled her business the way she was supposed to. Lindberg was a late-minute replacement, last-second replacement, so I do think that it's a must if you want to draw Clarissa Shields, an impression out of Clarissa Shields. It's a must that you get that kind of statement win. Maria Lindberg has been a girl that's been durable, has been in with some good fighters, but I don't know if she was just shop worn or if it was just a 3-4 days notice that she took the fight on. she just looked completely incapable. I mean, if Savannah keeps landing the same overhand right, and when she misses it, she throws the left hook to the body. That's what Savannah was showing me. She never showed me those two things. It was the overhand right, some solid jabs on the outside. Don't get me wrong, smooth boxing, solid jabs on the outside. But then the attack position, the offensive attack to hurt you position, she was taking the approach of overhand right, left hook to the body, and especially if she got Lindberg to bend underneath the overhand right. Her feet were now planted, and she was sitting duck for the hook to the body. So smart way of setting shots up. And then the counter right hand dropped her for the first time. The first knockdown was on a counter right hand. It was the same kind of thing where she looped the right hand this time over the top of the jab. So nice job of timing, Lindberg. But I don't know. I just felt like Lindberg reminded me of somebody you'd see when you're fighting coming up the ladder. Yes, she's took the fight on 3-4 days notice, but it doesn't mean she should be this incapable. You know, like if a girl is coming over the top of you consistently, shoot a feint. You know, feint and draw that false counter out of her, or make her hesitate in order to see when she's going to counter. If I remember when I was fighting, if somebody was starting to time my jab, if somebody was starting to time me over the top of it, I would start feinting with the jab more. So this way, now you don't know if I'm coming with the jab or if I'm setting you up to draw the counter out of you so I can counter your counter. You know, so these are things, I'm only mentioning this because these are things that Savannah is going to see with a girl of Clarissa's level. You know, it's going to be a high-level chess match, and with both girls obviously looking to make a violent statement. Here's where I was impressed with Savannah. Smooth jab on the outside, more snap to it. And really when she finds her range for that right hand, but she's tall and she's rangy. So when she is able to extend properly on her right hand, she can do some damage. But she's going to need that consistent jab, I think, the smooth, snappy, consistent, and creative jab in order to get Clarissa's respect. Because you're not going to land those heavier shots that easily, or even as easily in general, if you don't have your jab working for you against Clarissa, because Clarissa is not going to just either make you miss or take the shot. Clarissa is also going to counter you if you're making those mistakes, something Lindberg was not doing. But nonetheless, having said that, the performance based on what she had in front of her was exactly what we needed. You're right there.
Eddie Hearn is constantly saying that Savannah Marshall is the pound for pound hardest women's puncher. It doesn't matter to Clarissa Shields, who says Savannah Marshall cannot with me. Too slow. I'm happy she called me out. She hasn't got what it takes to beat the greatest woman of all time. Eddie Hearn, if you love me, pay me. So she wants to fight. Hopefully we get it.
I mean, Clarissa's shown us that she's been willing to fight anybody in and around her weight class. I think Savannah showed some good power, but I've got to see it against some more capable fighters to see if she's the hardest puncher. I mean, I think it goes without question that Savannah's a capable world-class female fighter. The hardest puncher that I've seen in female boxing in this era so far is Jelena Mrdenovic. I mean, I've seen her knock guys out cold, not girls out cold, you know, where you got to get the smelling salts out. It's very rare to see a girl have that kind of power. But Savannah is showing a good mix of a lot of things, and I think the fight, if Eddie can pay Clarissa and they can make this fight, I mean, I don't see the problem with making it right now. You have a built-in rivalry. Savannah did what she was supposed to do last night, and Clarissa is looking for a competitive fight. She's yet really to catch anyone who has even been able to put her in a troubling situation where we'll have to judge her based on her character and not just based on her boxing prowess. Because right now, Clarissa has not been put in any really difficult situations to where you can say she has the championship character inside of her. I think at a certain point, everybody has to go through that. Even Floyd Mayweather, who always made it look so easy. There were moments in fights where, maybe the naked eye the layman doesn't tell you he's in trouble, but he's got to really work his way out of certain situations. He just made it look so easy that you didn't notice it. Clarissa, though, the fights I've noticed, she has been in absolutely no trouble at all. So, and that goes to show how good she is. It's a testament to how good she is. But at the same time, I'd love to see her be put in positions where she's got to dig in a little bit. Even if she makes it look easy, she may have to get posed at those positions. She may be posed at those situations, and then still makes it look easy. But a guy like me, I recognize when you're put in those situations. Maybe the layman doesn't, but I have not noticed she's been put in those kind of situations yet. We'll see if Savannah can be the girl to do it.
Another women's bout was Courtenay and Bridges. That was a grueling fight, to be fair. It was pretty bloody. Courtenay got a cut to her head, and it was back and forth for a bit. It was a bit crude, let's say, from Bridges, but it was a good win for Courtenay.
Yeah, and also the entertaining kind of fight you need. You're looking at a female fights, sometimes the detractors try to say, they have to put on the same kind of fight. Sometimes the female fights are actually better, and these girls gave us a good account of themselves.
Are we in the best women's era of boxing ever?
I think so, yeah. But I think that's also natural progression too.
Yeah.
If you look at all sports, football, American football, baseball, hockey, basketball, I think every era, especially the old time eras, they were good, but you look at the more modern eras, you start to look at the more modern eras, and the guys and girls are just faster, sharper, better technically, better thinkers. Even to make the MMA comparison, I mean, we have seen the full scope of mixed martial arts from the beginning. I mean, at least I have, because I'm old enough to remember the very first UFC, and now the mixed martial arts, the sport of mixed martial arts today. It's like night and day. I mean, they look like cavemen fighting in the first UFC. They didn't even, half of them didn't know what they were doing, and now you've just got guys with skill on top of skill on top of skill. So really, I think it's just natural progression by the females as well. I think now you're starting to see an era, a generation where you're seeing females that are pros that have had the full scope of boxing experience since they're children. You never had that before. When women's boxing first started being sanctioned as a professional sport, even an amateur sport, you still had just full-grown women just going into the sport. Now you're starting to see the era come about where those originals laid the blueprint for children that were little girls to start boxing. And now those little girls have turned to full-blown women, and they are showing the world-class skill. So I absolutely agree with you, Dan, that women's boxing is in the best era it's been right now. And the pioneers of the early women's boxing, the sport of women's boxing, really need to be credited for that, because some were better than others. I mean, I remember, for example, Lou Del Val's sister, Melissa Salomon, was a super slick, super good fighter that never got the credit she deserved because, nobody was paying attention to it, and too many female fights were just full of just brute fights instead of technical fights. And I remember thinking, wow, this girl, not, for lack of a better comparison, I was like, this girl fights like a guy. Smooth moves, angles, and everything. So I think, girls like that, Christy Martin, obviously Layla Ali, all those originals, who Layla, I think, was also ahead of her time. I think they laid the blueprint and the building blocks for the women of today to be the champion fighters that they are, because those women of today were children and started boxing watching those girls.
Also, there was a very good 6th round stoppage for Ennis, who beat Lipinets, and I think we all kind of saw that one coming. I've actually been counting these scores, and as you probably expected, Paulie has got every single prediction right. I got one wrong, and that was Bridges. I thought Bridges could maybe do something against Courtenay, but no, it wasn't to be. But that was another very, very good win, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I tell you what. I'm not going to say the shock was that Ennis wins, but there was a shock factor to this fight nonetheless, because it was the way he disposed of Sergey Lipinets. Really, really sharp skills. Jaron Ennis is a complete package here. He's got sharp skills, terrific punching power. And what I mean by sharp skills is he's terrific balance, as we talked about with Conor Benn, but also goes down to the body, goes down to the head, mixes his shots very well, very creative, can counter, can lead. I mean, he's got the full package. For me, Jaron Ennis is a guy who's going to be around for a while. Even the last combination where he stopped Lipinets, when he started with the uppercut, and Lipinets made kind of dipped on the uppercut, right? He kind of swayed the uppercut a little bit with his glove, so the uppercut missed. But what you did was you got the reaction to keep Lipinets in place for your hook. Lipinets, being the world-class fighter that he is, an ex-world champion himself, tried to ride with the uppercut to make it miss and then come back with his own hook. Ennis, from the southpaw position, threw the uppercut and hook. So their hooks are taken off from the same side, because Ennis' right hook is coming from the side Lipinets' left hook is coming from. Yeah. But Ennis' right hook gets there faster. Why? Because it's shorter, more compact. And that's the end. That's actually the shot that ended the fight. So Lipinets went to ride with the uppercut, shoot the hook. but it got there second, which means it didn't get there because Lipinets' hook was shorter and faster. So, again, the small details really go a long way when you reach the world-class level. And Lipinets is an ex-world champion, but he's by no means a guy who's totally faded. You know, he's still at a pretty good age where he can be effective. But Jaron Ennis, just too good. And I think, like I said, he's going to be around for a while. It's the minor details, the things you see really kind of spit at you and like, wow, you know, like they kind of get your attention. But even the little minute details that I catch of this guy, he's really, really very, very impressive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a top fighter. All right,
but I do want to get into Joe Smith and Vlasov though, because that was a really good fight. That was a really good fight. Joe Smith, the New Yorker, native New Yorker, lunch pail, bring your lunch pail kind of fighter. You know what I'm saying? He's always been a guy who's had the odds against him. Really strong, rugged guy, construction worker type out of New York. Really a blue collar guy, nicest guy if you meet him. Not a big talker, but a solid. Both human being and fighter. And I mean, if we look at the road to this guy has had, I mean, from knocking out Fonfara when he was about a 30-1 underdog to then knocking out Hopkins to then I think he lost to Sullivan Barrera, which I don't even know why they put him in with Sullivan Barrera, because it's stylistically Barrera just moves all over the place. You got a guy who just came off those 2 big wins. You want to keep guys in front of him. You realize his punching power was his main strategy. So you lose to Sullivan Barrera, but then he knocks out Eleider Alvarez. Again, another fight where he's an underdog. So consistently has beaten the odds. Hasn't had the most generous matchmaking either, and because again, if you come off 2 solid wins off of Fonfara and Hopkins, where you were a 30-1 dog and then you were a 3-1 dog, you shouldn't get put into that matchup where the style is completely unfavorable to you. You know, at least you should be put in a world-class fight against the guy who stands in front of you. So he had to come back after that setback and then continue to do what he does. The Vlasov fight in February got canceled because of COVID. I think Vlasov tested positive for COVID, even if he had no symptoms. And he actually said during the broadcast that he didn't even have the antibodies when he got tested again. So I don't even know how he had COVID if he was no symptoms and then he had no antibodies when he got tested for it in April.
It's a new variant, the Mars variant.
Maybe the old variant. I don't know, but it was 2 months ago, and then he's got no antibodies when he tested negative right before this fight. So I don't even know how this works anymore. But regardless of that, Vlasov, I want to get into this fight because it was a real solid technical fight, and it was really, really entertaining fight. First off, Smith is known as a puncher, right? You expect a guy Vlasov, who has a little bit of an awkward style, to dance around him and use his movement. But Vlasov employed an interestingly strategic style, and I think for this reason, he was not only able to throw Smith off a bit, but also he was able to last the distance. And in a very competitive fight where, you know, you have an argument to say he won it too. I mean, I think the fight could go either way. He stood right in front of Smith, a lot of head movement, and boxed Smith from, I wouldn't say the pocket, but from the middle range, where he was always in range to be hit with a big power. And for the majority of the fight, he backed up the power puncher. Now, here's the thing about punchers. They're not used to being backed up like this. So I think the reason Vlasov was able to not really be hurt in the fight, I do think, I'm going to get into the 11th round in a second, but I do think Vlasov was able to not even really be hurt in the fight as he took a couple of good clean shots during the fight, was because Smith was punching off the back foot, and a puncher like Smith is not used to having to punch off the back foot. I remember Tim Bradley, I think it was in round 7, made a really, really solid point because Smith landed a nice left hook on Vlasov off the ropes while Vlasov was trying to work when Smith had his back to the ropes. And he landed a really solid left hook. And Bradley made a great point. He made an astute point. He said, the reason Vlasov took it so well is because he's forcing Smith to punch off the back foot. If Smith had stepped into that hook instead of stepping back as he threw the hook and threw it almost like a check, he would have had a more damaging effect on Vlasov. Yeah. But I think this was all par for the course as far as the plan for Vlasov, to keep Smith backing up. Now, it's easier said than done because you're going to the puncher, so you've got to avoid taking the damage. But once you start consistently backing up the puncher, he loses confidence in his power, and he loses a little bit of steam in his shots. Now, credit to Smith for making some adjustments. The fight was a back-and-forth affair. I actually employed this tactic against Zab Judah. I remember Judah having a really solid 3 rounds in the end of his fight against Danny Garcia, which he lost. But he really did a lot of damage to Garcia at the end of the fight, 6 months prior to me fighting Zab. And I remember thinking, Judah's coming in with some confidence now, coming off the end of that fight. But and it was competitive, and he gained a lot of positive critiquing from the fight because people had thought he was kind of done. So I said, I've always known Zab was a guy who was a puncher, and he punches off of confidence. So I went into the fight thinking I'm gonna try to back him up. I'm gonna try to stay in his face, and that tactic worked for me as well. Even the shots Zab landed in that fight didn't really have a big effect on me because I was keeping Zab backing up. So I think Vlasov, while he did this, he also showed world-class ability in doing this because you can't just go to a puncher like Joe Smith and not get knocked out if you stand right in front of him and be careless. Credit to Smith though, he made some adjustments. The rounds he won obviously were powerful rounds. I do think round 11 he deserved the knockdown. I don't know what Gary Ritter was doing in the fight there, where he suddenly said Vlasov went down because of a rabbit punch, but it was in the clinch and Vlasov turned his head. So you see that happening all the time when you're trying to stay in the clinch and you turn your head away and trying to rest on a guy's shoulder, rest on a guy's chest. He was trying to smother Smith because Smith was hurt, and Smith just landed a shot in there and he took a knee. But I don't think he took a knee from that rabbit punch. I think he took a knee because he'd been hurt to the body during that assault that he was taking. Mm-hmm. And I think he just looked for a way to take a knee. And Ritter didn't call it a knockdown. We've seen so many times where that's called a knockdown, and I think it should have been a knockdown there. And then Ritter took him to his own corner to recover from the alleged rabbit punch. So he's getting instruction from his own corner. You got to take him. They got a neutral corner. I remember Joe DeGuardia, Smith's promoter, and Carl Moretti from Top Rank, who's Smith's co-promoter, were going crazy because Ritter's just standing in his own corner and he's getting instructions during the 5-minute break from the alleged rabbit punch. Though Smith closed the show really strongly in round 12. I could have had it a 6-6 fight, but I think the right guy got the decision just because I think he was screwed out of a knockdown in round 11, which in a 6-6 fight would have won him the fight anyway. So I'd love to see a rematch. I don't know where you bring Joe Smith at this point because he's a solid lunch pail kind of guy, but you put him in with Beterbiev, he might knock out Beterbiev or he might get knocked out by Beterbiev. Exactly. It's a completely explosive fight. He's already fought Bivol, and although he hurt Bivol in the fight, Bivol won the fight kind of one-sided. So as far as unification, those are your options, but you want to go in killer mode. I think my play here for Joe Smith, I like to see a rematch of Vlasov. There's enough interest. It was a very entertaining fight. And I think Smith can probably make the adjustments to do better in the second fight. Vlasov is 34 years old. He had a really solid performance with Smith. Came up just short. But I think it gives Smith a chance to show his ability to adjust, make the adjustments, and win the fight more one-sidedly. Maybe even stop Vlasov. And I think it would be entertaining to think about. I think Beterbiev, Bivol are risk fights, and Smith has a sort of a bring your lunch, go to work for the day kind of style. So those kind of guys can be beaten if they don't get the knockout. So I'd love to see a rematch with Vlasov, personally. New York's still strong in boxing.
Come on, New York has still got it. Come on. That's why he took all that time, because you just didn't New York.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, in the news, the Ring Magazine rankings are out. I will read them to you right now. We have Kazuto Ioko at number 10, Josh Taylor at number 9, Vasyl Lomachenko at number 8, Juan Francisco Estrada at number 7, Teofimo Lopez at number 6, Errol Spence at number 5, Usyk at number 4, Terence Crawford at number 3, Inoue at number 2, and Canelo Alvarez at number 1. Before we continue, do you agree? Do you ever agree with the Ring?
It's tough with the top 3. My top guy is Terence Crawford right now. But I mean, you can't really knock Canelo being there. I really like Inoue as well. I like Inoue as well, but I'd like to see more of him. I think he was a little bit too hittable in the Donaire fight. But then again, even a guy like Donaire is you're not gonna find that many guys that sharp and that fast. And he still got by that, relatively comfortable at the end of the day. It was finally a chance to see Inoue in a 12-round fight where he's not blowing somebody out of the water. So I was glad to have been able to see that. My top guy is still Terence Crawford. I like Usyk being up there, but I think Usyk is a little bit in a stagnated position because I don't think he's going to be big enough to win a world heavyweight title. He dominated a cruiserweight, so obviously the next logical step would have been to be a heavyweight, but I don't know to what level he can maintain superiority at heavyweight. Solid win over Chisora for sure, but I start to wonder because he first of all, he's not going to get Joshua and Fury because it looks like they're still trying to make that fight. And let's say they don't make that fight. You're really going to pick Usyk over Joshua, over Fury? I don't. Regardless of how good he is, I think the lack of size is going to really hurt him. Even more so against Fury. But maybe he could be mildly competitive against Joshua, but I'd still favor Joshua in that fight. Even having Usyk at number 4, I don't see Usyk with any room to grow from that 4 position at that point, even if you have him. Teofimo,
is there anyone missing from this list that you would have in?
I like Beterbiev, man. I think he's a scary guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. Well, do you know what? I'm looking at this list. It's hard to argue with the Ring because they're obviously strenuously going through it.
I argue with them all the time, but it's okay.
Of course you do. Of course you do. But I agree. I'm not sure if Usyk should be there right now. He's now a heavyweight that we're yet to see what he does in the heavyweight division. But Beterbiev should probably be in there. What I found interesting is that there is not one heavyweight in this pound for pound list. Obviously, at this time of recording right now, AJ and Fury are both finalising the site as we speak. So we don't know where that's going to be, but we're guessing where it could be. I'm going to guess that it is in Saudi. I've got a sneaky feeling that once you get into bed with the Saudis, you stay in bed with the Saudis.
Yeah. You know what they say? Once you go Middle East, you don't go back. I don't think there's a heavyweight in there because they've just not been busy. Everybody else is making noise, looking impressive, having statement wins, and the heavyweight division, at least the guys who might be on the pound for pound list, have not really been busy lately. So I think that's why they've kind of slid out of everyone's attention. But they're world class guys, and I think a solid performance by the winner of Fury and Joshua puts himself in position to be in that pound for pound list.
All right. In terms of this pound for pound list, if we're making our own, what is your top 3?
I'm gonna go with Crawford 1, and then it gets a little bit. Then it gets a little bit shaky. After Crawford's my definitive number 1, and I don't necessarily know that he beats Spence, mind you. Spence is a naturally bigger guy who's got enough skills to offset Crawford. But I rate Crawford on the pound for pound list because he's won several titles in different weight classes, and so that carries on the pound for pound list, your resume, so to speak. Yeah. But after that, I could put Canelo too at this point. Especially I love the fact that he's fighting Billy Joe. That if he wins the Billy Joe fight, I think he really makes a statement towards where he can be on the pound for pound list. Crawford beating Pacquiao is also would be a good statement if he's able to get that fight and get that win. But people will always detract this saying Pacquiao was older. Meantime, every time we see this guy Pacquiao fighting, he's taking on top guys and beating them, and even at his age. So is it gonna be a question that he gets old overnight when he fights Crawford, or is it gonna be a question that you have to get credit Crawford because based on what Pacquiao's done lately in his in-ring career, it's still been high level. You can't Monday morning quarterback these kind of things afterwards. You have to make your decision before that. So I think Crawford, if he gets a statement win over Pacquiao, and Canelo, if he gets a statement win over Billy Joe, really puts himself at a solid 1 or 2 position. You can kind of start interchanging those guys. 3, I don't have a problem with Inoue either being the top 3. I don't see him getting beat for a while. I could see Inoue at number 3. I don't see Inoue getting beat for a while, and I think he's got a chance to really continue to make statements. I don't know what opponents really stick out to me at this point for Inoue. In those small weight classes, you want some really good dance partners. And Inoue deserves all the credit he's getting. He's world class. He's tremendously world class. He's tremendous power. But I'd love to see a marquee matchup with Inoue, and I don't know that anybody's going to be able to come out of that in and around those weight classes to give themselves some star status, some star power, because Inoue is going to just take out everybody around him. It's gonna end up becoming like the Roy Jones era, where nobody else was able to join the elite forces and create a demand because Roy was beating them all right away. So we'll see. But I still think Inoue, for that reason, does deserve credit. I don't think anybody's going to be around him.
Well, it basically means that your top 3 is pretty close to the Rings in their top three is Canelo, Inoue, and Crawford. Yours would just be that almost flipped on its head. And mine would be that exact three with Canelo at the top, Terence Crawford, then Inoue. So for all the disagreeing we do with the ring, it seems that we do just as much agreeing as with them. So
yeah. Oh, of course. They are pros. I'm just not scared to disagree if I have to. But in this case, not too much disagreement, just a little bit.
All right, into our predictions. We have Demetrius Andrade fighting Liam Williams this weekend. What are you predicting for that fight?
I mean, I'm predicting an Andrade win. I think it's just criminal what they're doing to Demetrius Andrade. I think it's criminal. He is one of the most talented guys in this generation, and he's going to end up retiring and probably going to have to go get a job. You know, when he should have made enough money from boxing to live out the rest of his life. When we talk pound for pound list, we should be talking Demetrius Andrade. When we talk top fighters, we should be talking Demetrius Andrade. But he gets kind of pushed to the back burner, fighting these non-entity kind of fights, wins them easily, and then everybody says, oh, he's not fighting anybody. Nobody fights him. And when, I'll tell you what's going to happen to this guy. He's going to get past his prime, which is going to happen soon because he's in his 30s, and then one of the big boys is going to fight him and knock him out, and people are going to say, see, he wasn't that good to begin with. It's criminal. I mean, to me, it's criminal. I got Andrade in the fight, but I can't talk about Demetrius Andrade without mentioning how criminal his career has been treated.
Well, he's going to have a big couple of years, really, and really put his foot down. Or the people around him, people working for him.
People around, they have to make the fights. The fights have to be made. It's great. I didn't have to see Canelo fight Ebanie Yildirim. I didn't have to see that fight. I would have much rather seen him fight Andrade. But, they made Ebanie Yildirim.
It might still happen. It might still happen.
Now you can't complain about Canelo fighting Billy Joe because Billy Joe's world class. But nonetheless, between that and that, Andrade is still on the outside looking in. Not fair at all.
I'm going for a Demetrius Andrade win as well. So that is both of us. I'm going to probably stick pretty close to you on these predictions this time round. Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. I'm going Jake Paul.
So do I. I got Jake Paul in this fight. I'm curious. This is like a spectacle kind of fight, because it's a progression for Jake Paul. You're just throwing in Askren because Askren just needs to show his face after getting knocked out in 3 seconds. He needs to do something. So I think what's funny? I heard Askren was mad at me for saying it, but I mean I'm being serious, bro. I'm being, but here's the problem with Askren. I have with Askren. If you're gonna dish it, you gotta take it too. I remember Askren was talking a lot of crap about me when I lost the Lobo fight in the bare knuckle fight. But at least with the Lobo fight, anybody with eyes knows I really won the fight and got robbed. Yeah. Askren got knocked out in 3 seconds. When your whole fight can wind up in an Instagram post, not in an Instagram IGTV post, and an Instagram post, a regular post, bro, that's a problem if you didn't win. That's a big problem for me. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like I was criticizing him to say, he's like the criticism is not deserved. First of all, the criticism is deserved, and then Masvidal comes out the other day and puts up a video of the post-fight with me and Broner with the whole situation I had with that stalker chick and all that stuff. And, of course, you guys know the story. I don't want to give her more media than she needs. But, nonetheless, I guess Masvidal was mad that I was, big up in his KO. What's funny is I follow Masvidal on Instagram. I think he's an interesting guy, and I think I've enjoyed his career. But what I notice about these MMA guys is, especially some of these weird UFC guys, is they when they know they're on the outs of their career, they just start a beef with me. Conor McGregor was on his way out, and he's barely won a fight since, and he started a beef with me at that point, right when he was about to get beat by Mayweather, and he knew it, and then he has barely won a fight since. I think Masvidal's doing the same thing, if I'm honest. I think that he got outclassed by Usman his last fight. He's going to rematch Usman now. He's probably going to get dragged all over the place again by Usman in that cage again. So he probably is already preparing for his post-fight promotion in that he's saying, okay, let me start a beef with Malignaggi because it always goes well because he always talks a lot of stuff back and keeps me in the press. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's smart, I guess. It works for McGregor. People still talk about the beef with me and him, even though he's getting beat from pillar to post. Even though he gets beat. But here's the thing: McGregor's always getting beat from pillar to post every fight. But hey, at least people can always bring up the positivity of his 3 seconds of highlights he had in our sparring. With Masvidal, it's kind of the same thing now. He's like, you know, he knows he's going to get dragged from pillar to post all over the place. I mean, Usman has more time to prepare for him specifically this time, because last time I think Masvidal wound up being a last-minute replacement. So Usman wasn't exactly prepped for that particular style. Bro, you're probably going to get dragged all over the place again, beat from pillar to post. So you started the beef with me. Smart of you. Good stuff. So I'm going to give you the abuse back. If you're going to dish it, you got to take it back. I'm going to enjoy getting you see your butt whooped, though.
I'm guessing that means Jake Paul stops Ben Askren.
Yeah, and that's not even to say because I don't like Ben Askren. It's because, I mean, it's kind of obvious. The guy's got no hand skills. In a striking fight, we saw we saw his capabilities or lack thereof. And I don't think Jake Paul is, you know, of an elite level, obviously. I think everybody knows that. But he's been boxing for a couple of years now. You know, he knows his way around things. And if he can get over the mental pressure, because it's going to be a little bit of mental pressure here when you're fighting a guy who's actually done some combat, I think when you're in there, you know, you're going to handle your business. But let's see what I'm curious to see about that too. Let's see how Jake Paul's mental is in this fight, because he is going to get a guy who's going to stand up to him just a little bit more than the last two opponents. So we're going to see, like I was talking about Clarissa Shields with the character, we're going to see a little bit of character revealed in Jake Paul, and we're going to see where it's at. Because I think Askren does have character. If he's not conscious, he can't show you that, like in the Masvidal fight. But I think Askren does have some character. I don't expect him to go away easily.
Yeah. Again, we're having world champions on undercards of I won't call it a YouTube fight because it's not a YouTube fight, but a
celebrity fights.
It's a comedy bout. But call it this, yeah.
Outside the box.
It is. But is it good for boxing? Is it good for the fighters? You know, is all exposure good exposure?
Yeah, I think all exposure is good exposure. Boxing needs all the help it can get as far as getting exposure, and I think these guys, these YouTube fighters, YouTube celebs, kind of bring that. Especially the Paul brothers, they've really done a good job of marketing themselves off their boxing. Personally, I had no clue who they were until they're boxing. You know, so a guy like me now is fully aware of who they are. Yeah. You know, so their boxing worked for them. So vice versa, possibly it works the same way, where Jake Paul and Logan Paul fans are now getting to know certain fighters on their undercards. You know, be it that they may be world class or not, and you're seeing a lot of world class guys on those undercards. But the bottom line remains: the viewership is going to be at a high level because of the fact that they are the ones bringing the viewers. So you've got to put them on the undercard, because you know what? You're going to wind up like the situation I saw in Miami in last January in 2020, where Jake Paul was fighting the other YouTube guy in his first pro boxing match. They're both of their first pro boxing matches. And Demetrius Andrade against Luke Keeler was the main event. And so you did it that time where you put the YouTuber on the undercard. What happens? 3/4 of the arena left after Jake Paul's fight. So the world champion is at the time, I think Andrade was defending the WBO title. You've got him. You've got the world champion just, you know, performing in an empty arena, you know. And this was before all the arenas were getting closed for COVID, you know. So I understand why now they've reversed the order. You know, it makes sense. A lot of the viewership is going to tune in for Jake Paul, and even MMA has a lot of fans. I mean, the MMA fans watch anything where their guys are involved. You know, that's the reason you can make these crossover fights. I mean, I don't think boxers will watch boxing fans will watch Floyd Mayweather doing a swimming contest. I don't think you'll have that, but or in a table tennis tournament or something. But MMA fans watch anything that their guys do. Anything. If their guy's flying a kite, they'll watch it. You know, so you can get these people to watch anything as long as you put one of their fighters in there. And so Askren is also going to bring a lot to the table as far as the fans.
Right, on this day in 2019, the 12th of April, ex-boxer pundit Ant Crolla fought Vasyl Lomachenko, and it wasn't the greatest of nights for him. It very rarely is for anybody that fights Vasyl Lomachenko. But he said, I don't want to go out like that, but the end is near. As a fighter, are you aware when you're on the slide, when you feel like maybe you're trying to squeeze blood out of a stone and get one more big performance out? Do you know when the end is close?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally for me, I was just trying to keep the checks of a certain level at least, you know. So I was saying if I can just squeeze out a couple of wins, you know, the checks are still going to be good, you know. But once you start to lose at a lower level, you realize the checks are not going to be good, so you're probably better off just retiring, you know. So I think Crolla saying that at that point, I think he understood. It wasn't the fact that he lost to Lomachenko, it was probably the way he lost to Lomachenko that made him realize the end was near. A lot of times you'll see you're not able to pull the trigger as fast, you're hesitating more, shots are affecting you more, you're feeling the punches more because, you know, you can only take so many punches in a career before you become shot. So maybe you realize you don't take as good of a punch anymore. You're not as sure of yourself in those pockets. And you know, and also, you know, one big thing I found that's problematic, you become more injury prone preparing for fights. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to train hard, just like you did when you're younger, and you go into camp with that mental approach that you're going to train very, very hard. But now as you're older, you train that hard and you're going to get injured and not even get to the fight. So now you've got to figure out other ways to train. And like Floyd Mayweather always says, you train smarter, not harder as you get older. But sometimes, you know, it's easier said than done because your mind is used to telling you you're not prepared for a fight unless you train this way. And all of a sudden now you've got to convince your mind it's going to be okay. I can prepare another way and still be prepared for the fight. But ultimately, it does take a toll on your performances. And aging is nature. Nobody beats Father Time.
One more very important on this day comes from 1865, 16th of April, when John Douglas actually created the new rules of boxing, the Queensberry rules, transformed the sport into what it is today. I didn't expect that one to pop up, if I'm totally honest. That's a big one. It's not a fight, but it's the reason we have boxing as it is today.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The Queensberry rules, Marcus of Queensberry rules, they were made in England, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
You guys can take credit for those because those started to modernize the game, and little by little we've got the sport of boxing that we have today. Ironic, I didn't even know. I figured the guy's name would have Queensberry in there. I didn't know what the Marcus of Queensberry was. I thought it was just the guy's name who made the rules. The only John Douglas I know was this cruiserweight journeyman I used to spar in Gleason's gym back in the day.
It's probably his grandson or something like that. It's something. But do you know what? Speaking on that, as a final question before we clock out, if you could change one thing, one rule about boxing, what would it be?
Oh, man. If I could change one thing, let's see. I would probably say that there needs to be a neutral panel judging the judges. And a neutral panel meaning somebody who can't be swayed to take the side of the judges or forgive them, be as forgivable for bad decisions or bad scorecards, you know? And this neutral panel should only be called into work when there is absolutely ridiculous scorecards where the majority of the people of the population feels like that scorecard was absolutely ridiculous. Think about it like the Canelo Golovkin first scorecard with first fight with Adelaide Bird, or even my 118-110 loss scorecard, the Juan Diaz with Gail Van Hoy was the judge there, or you know, countless others. I think there needs to be a neutral panel, and obviously this is just wishful thinking. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Yeah. I think there needs to be a neutral panel, a panel so neutral that they cannot be bought or they cannot be swayed by friendships or contacts within. And those people should be able to now take a vote on whether that judge should ever be allowed to judge again, ever. You know what I'm saying?
Lifetime bans.
Yeah, lifetime ban. Because if you put on scorecards like that, that means you can be bought, swayed, influenced in some ways that is just not that is just not going to help the sport, and it can happen again and again and again. There was it's funny, we brought this up when somebody asked the question, what were the scorecards when I stopped Senchenko in 2012? One of the judges had him winning the fight, when in a fight I was dominating. So again, people like that, they need to be out of the sport. They need to be eliminated, like a weed in the garden. You know, a garden is a beautiful thing, but you got weeds, you know, it's gonna mess up the garden. So corrupt judges, because I call them corrupt judges. It can't be. Nobody's that bad. Nobody's that stupid. You know, so no matter what, when you say what were they watching, no, they knew what they were watching. They just did it on purpose. So corrupt judging, to keep it allowed to be going, is basically organized crime. You know, because it's benefiting somebody. For them to be allowed to keep working, it's basically organized crime. So you talk about the days of organized crime and the mafia was in boxing. Personally, it's the same thing, just in a different entities controlling things now. So as a matter of fact, a lot of times when the mafia was controlling boxing, it was probably more clean than it is now in some ways. You know, so and it was probably flowing better than it is now. You know, so I think that at this point, that would be a wish of mine, but it's probably just wishful thinking. People have contacts in high places, and they always get to work again and again and again. So that's if I could change one thing.
You've gone for the best. You've gone for the best. Best improvement to the sport. If I'm totally honest, I would have done something stupid. I would have put like slide tackles in or something. or something else.
Leg kicks.
Away game, yeah. Home and away match. That's what I want. A double header. That's all we have time for today. It has been a pleasure. Paulie, we've done it again. I try and get this show under 30 minutes, and I just can't.
You know what it is, man? I talk too much. I've always had that problem.
It's you.
I've always had that problem.
As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, ask us questions, stay locked to Box Out, and we will see you next week. Yes, people, I am Savage Dan.
I'm Paulie Malignaggi.
You are watching Mouthpiece, the official boxing podcast.
We are two of the most knowledgeable, two of the most charismatic, biggest personality guys in boxing, and we are two of the coolest cats talking about the sport today.